My name is McKayla Robinette, and this is my careers presentation for environmental careers. I took a look at environmental policy analyst positions. This is a position that I could see myself in the future pursuing, and I'm very interested in kind of the role that they play within the government. So just want to share with you guys about that today. So just a little bit about the position. So the primary role of this position is a researcher. They research the data and relationships that different policies have within the environment, as well as multiple proposed solutions, and that's within the government as well as within nonprofits and other third parties. So they do work closely with governmental leaders to make sure that they're reviewing the right work, but then also proposing new ideas. And so they write reports and policy briefs as well as white papers. And white papers are essentially just an overview of a policy position or a piece of legislation that these organizations will pass out to their members so that way they're educated on that. And so the salary for these positions ranges anywhere from 40,000 to upwards of 80,000. I did see one position that was for senior level that was 100,000 a year. So they're making pretty good money. And then it requires a bachelor's degree in environmental studies with some policy. However, the senior policy analyst positions require graduate degrees for advancement, and so you can get either a master's or a doctorate in environmental policy and pursue those positions. These positions also work a lot with like campaigning and working again trying to represent the organization or their boss in the governmental organizations for their position and their job. So the impact of this position and why the environmental policy analyst position is important to you. So essentially, environmental policy analysts make people aware of issues and legislation, and that relates to both you as a person who enjoys the environment, as well as the people that are making those decisions. Another option for this position is working to educate policymakers. So these positions do allow them to be in a place where they can guide legislation and kind of lobby a little bit more with a little bit more education behind them for the decisions that need to be made. And so essentially what this leads to is more informed policymakers that in turn make better decisions or what we would think would be better decisions. And this can be anything from as the image is showing clean air and clean energy to the looking at the forest plan and kind of the areas that are impacted, especially in Brevard and Western North Carolina with all of the forests and things like that. And so now I just want to talk about some ways that you could potentially be involved, not only as an environmental studies student, but also just for your personal use. So one of the ways is getting connected with organizations, and here's a list of a couple of environmental organizations, and all of these do have environmental policy analyst positions. If they're not available, then they're filled. And so looking at, so for example, Oceana, looking at water quality, and we're looking at the treatment and the maintenance of ocean wildlife, so they're pretty cool. And then another way that you can get involved potentially is the Federal Register. So anytime a proposed a proposed governmental action is being made, it has to be open for public comment. And so to make those comments where you can say, I agree, I disagree, and here's why, with the government moving forward on this. All of that happens through the Federal Register. So if you just Google Federal Register, it pops up, and you can see upcoming actions, as well as actions that are currently on the table, and get involved with that. So now that I've kind of talked to you a little bit about the environmental policy analyst position, I know it's a little bit more difficult for us to have like an engaged discussion live, because this is a recording. However, there will be a forum open up on Sakai, that we can kind of engage with each other about this issue, or about this topic. And so here are some options for the forum discussion. Feel free to branch out from this, but if you're kind of struggling to find things to talk about, one thing is to browse the Federal Register and some of the public comments that have been made on certain topics, and you can either leave a comment or send a comment in the forum that kind of shows what you saw and what you feel about it. It's kind of an interesting website, so you might find some cool things, or it might be disinteresting to you. You can look into the policy positions of various groups. So again, going back to all of those organizations do have very set policy positions, and so look at kind of the areas that they're falling into, and maybe you can see how this position would relate to you on a personal level. And then another one is to identify a topic to reach out to your senator or representative about. So one of the best ways to enact change is to make your position known, and make people aware of what you want to be changed. People don't know unless you tell them. And so if reaching out to one of your representatives is something that you'd be interested in, I'd love to help you in the forum, help formulate what you would like to speak about, and then help guide you in ways that you can do that. But again, feel free to ask any other questions. And I thank you guys for listening to my presentation, and I hope that you guys are all doing good, and thank you again.